Thank you, and welcome to Marquette Moments for Friday, March 13th. We're here in Marquette City Hall with Mayor Mike Coyne. Your Honor, welcome.
Good afternoon.
We're trying something a little different here today. We've got you in the conference center, or conference room, I guess, in the city manager's office. We've got the city logo behind us, and it's a step up or a step over, at least, from city commission chambers where we had the set the last time. You guys had a meeting this past Monday, city commission meeting, and there were, again, it wasn't too busy of an agenda this past time, but some of the things that had come up were some exciting projects, I guess, in the community, some grant applications for some projects in the community. Can you touch on a couple of those? One was Father Marquette Park, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there were two of them. One was a grant to, we were applying for a grant to make it accessible and a little more attractive to people to visit, which I think is very important because right now it's impossible for someone with a physical disability to get to see it. And they've spent a lot of time and effort and money on repairing the statue, which was vandalized, and it's now in tip-top shape. And I think it'll really be a nice addition with a winding, accessible path to it. And the other was a grant applied for, well, back to the Father Marquette grant. It's a matching grant, and the Beautification Committee has pledged to raise $41,000 to do this project along with the grant. And there'll be no city funds paying for this, so that's a very nice thing for a volunteer group to do, and we greatly appreciate that. The other is a non-matching grant with the Tourist Park Playground, and that's a Michigan Passport grant, and these grants are very difficult to get. And if you've been listening over the past year or two, Marquette has really been getting a lot of those, mainly due to real diligent work on the part of the administration, particularly Parks and Rec and the Community Development Group. They have really done a great job of getting these grants, so we're very happy. We don't have the grant yet, but we applied for it, but we have a very good track record.
Mm-hmm. And that was a conversation that I'd had recently with some staff too, is that, we're not sure if the community here realizes it, but it's not common for communities throughout the state to get a lot of these grants from the state, and we've been pretty lucky and successful in that regard, I think, in recent years. It seems like every few months there's a recreation passport grant or a DNR trust fund grant for the commission to take action on. Following along with some of those beautification aspects, this isn't the beautification committee, but the other thing that was on the agenda last week was tree planting in the city. And I don't know if people realize, kind of the meticulous nature of that, but Tree City from the Arbor Day Foundation, I believe. How important is that aspect of the community?
Well, I think we're fortunate that we are a tree city. We are also fortunate to be able to have a professional arborist manage our trees, and these are city trees, and they're very well planned out, well thought out as to where they should be, how they should grow, what kind of tree you should put here and there. Interesting, just Wednesday night I went to the Audubon Society meeting. They have one every month, and they were talking about the fruit trees in Marquette that are city trees that attract birds, and all those things just add up to making it just a more attractive city. And we have streets that have city trees planted on them, and the arborist is very good about helping you pick out a tree if you wish to plant it on city property, a proper tree. And it's just one more thing that makes this town unique and special.
And there was, I guess, some discussion about that recently for another matter, but these trees that are planted in city right-of-way, regardless of who plants them, city right-of-way is essentially city property, even if it's in front of your property or in between your house and the lake, correct? These are, I guess, public trees is what I'm saying,
right,
and not private property.
Right.
We'd spoken the last time you were here about the orphanage, some of the things that could be happening with that. There was there was something on the agenda this last week. There was a scheduling of a public hearing, some talk of an ordinance. Where does that process stand right now?
Well, this last meeting, we had to schedule a public hearing. I think might have two public hearings, but at least one is going to occur on March 20th, this was a Friday at 8 a.m. And that's an opportunity for people in the community to come and express their opinions about what they feel about this. And I can't imagine that there's going to be much negative on it. I mean, it's such a beautiful place originally, and it would be a great asset to have more affordable housing in the community, along with housing for veterans. So it's just a formal process that by law we're required to have a series of public hearings and then proceed if the owners and the developers can reach an agreement.
And I believe they'd said, correct me if I'm wrong, but at one of those upcoming hearings or at an upcoming public hearing, there was going to be a presentation by the developers or on behalf of the developers about that property, I believe.
Yes.
So people will have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about, what exactly is being proposed. Well, I guess when we talk about, economic development in the city and kind of moving the city forward, there are projects like that. The hospital project comes to mind. Some of the more broad form concepts that are based, or economic development is based on in the central Upper Peninsula, are kind of moving behind the scenes right now. I think it's not something that's coming to the forefront too much. The next Michigan zone, the Superior Trade Corridor, I believe it's called, is something that's at the state level right now. Where is that process, and can you kind of explain what that is a little bit for people?
Yes, well, what this is there's 5 economic development zones, or called Michigan zones, in the state. And recently, the legislature made it increase to 7, and Marquette is one of them. And it's a great opportunity to join Marquette and Delta counties together, and all the townships and cities in those 2 counties, to have great economic advantages for developers to come in, and also to encourage intermodal transportation like bus or rail or whatever in between these 2 communities of Delta and Marquette County. And I think it's probably the most exciting economic development tool in the past 50 years, and I hope it'll be very successful. Downstate, the 696 corridor by the Detroit airport is a next Michigan zone, and boy, that has been profoundly successful in terms of economic development. And I think this will be that. I have to go down in 2 weeks to appear and testify before the Michigan Strategic Fund, who monitors and grants this, and then we'll set it up. And we've been working on this for almost a year and a half, so hopefully we'll get that approved and then get it underway. And I think it has great potential economically for jobs and quality of life for all of us, better transportation. We have an international airport. We have 2 seaports, one on Lake Michigan, one on Lake Superior. We used to, in the good old days, have rail transportation between the 2, and things like that, I think, really are forward thinking, and hopefully will allow the airport to become truly an international airport, maybe with freight and with better rail connection. So there's all kinds of possibilities.
And certainly something like this spurs that cooperation between those jurisdictions and across the geographic area. I know that's kind of the backbone of these jurisdictions throughout the state, these zones. What other components are there? I believe there's something like, allowing them to, use tax incentives they wouldn't otherwise be able to use, or allowing them to access state grant programs they wouldn't otherwise be able to use. What are some of the vehicles for development beyond that?
Well, you just described those. Basically, those are the main things. And what it does, too, is, if you think about it, these are all kind of entities in and of themselves. There's very little intercoordination with Delta and Marquette County, which doesn't make sense. We should really coordinate with that. Frankly, we should probably eventually get Holton County to connect those three counties, because they're major economic developers, Iron Mountain, Menominee, and get them more tied in, because right now they're all kind of little fiefdoms and not too much interaction between them. And this will force that because of economic development, which it makes it more attractive to development people to come in and deal with it.
You've been involved with city government here for a number of years, on and off. And when you start talking about the next Michigan zone and that may be increasing cooperation in the near term with Delta County, you talk about the smart zone and the LDFA and that possibly increasing cooperation with Houghton and Hancock and Michigan Technological University. At the end of the day, I mean, regardless of the vehicle that you're using, how important is cooperation now and how has that changed among these municipalities in the UP?
Well, example, if times change, everything is changing, and you have to change in order to grow. And years ago, as I pointed out, they're all independent entities. I hardly ever talk to somebody in Houghton or Michigan Tech. With the LDFA and the Smart Zone, Northern and the city and Houghton, Hancock, and Marquette are now partnered in an economic development tool called the Smart Zone, which is phenomenal. That something like that never happened, and what that will result in is a lot more interaction with Michigan Tech and Northern and the cities and the young people, the entrepreneurs in both of those, and people who are investors. That's a whole new thing that was never thought of before 20 years ago. Now that is a great step forward in cooperation and economic development. You can just see what's going to happen. And the same with, it's a different thing. The next Michigan zone, it's not so much fostering entrepreneurship as it is developing industries that can begin to develop the UP and have better jobs and better retention of people staying here. So, and you're right, I've been involved in this for 4 decades, and frankly, almost all the economic development programs have not been very successful. I mean, it's sort of stagnant, and the city has spent a lot of money on economic development and kind of got not much result from it. So I think this has got great promise. I really do.
Do you see this as more of a shift toward that regional partnership or toward working with other municipalities and counties in the UP as opposed to, economic development in your backyard?
Yes, economic development in your backyard does not work. I think that's been proven over 40 years. Everybody who runs for office, well, I want more jobs, blah, 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 and that just doesn't happen because of the infrastructure there is not right for development and doesn't encourage entrepreneurship generally. So I think this is a great opportunity.
Okay. I think that's basically all of the recent topical questions that I had. I don't know if anything has come up in your travels in the last few weeks since we've done this.
Well, yeah, I don't have to travel. They follow me around. One of the real issues is the Michigan Tax Tribunal issues, both with people with businesses in the city and in the townships with the dark store. And those are just horrendous problems. It's causing, and it's mostly a UP problem. If you look downstate, if you Google it, there are no issues downstate about dark stores. But mark my word, when some of the stores downstate find out if this is successful, this is going to go all over the state and probably destroy the state economy, I think, for local government particularly, and the state. So we've been really working in a joint venture with the city, the county, the township, to try to get a satisfactory solution to this problem. I mean, it's a huge problem. It's causing marked effects on the city. We had to cut our budget $2 million. The library has been profoundly affected by it and will be if the tax tribunal issues with the power plant goes away. I mean, it's devastating to the services that the city and the library and the schools want to serve, and if you don't have the money, that's a real issue. So that's an ongoing issue.
And this is the issue where these businesses are challenging the property tax valuation on their property
Yes.
based on the activity happening there, saying
Correct.
that their valuation should be greatly reduced, and that's been supported by the Michigan Tax Tribunal, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And we're pursuing that, suing them. They're, I don't know who owns the power plant now, either We Energies or UPCO. I just heard today a rumor that that's not going to work out, but I don't know that. But it's a real problem, and We Energies is the #1 taxpayer in the city, and if they cut their taxes $200 or $300 or $500,000, that's a huge blow. And we will have to adjust, all of us, but we also don't have to just take it lying down. We can pursue it, and we are, with vigor.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't know if there was something else you were moving
Well,
down the
Duke
list
Life
there.
Point is another. The other issue that I've been working on is Duke Life Point, and we are very close to reaching a purchase agreement with them, and we were very fortunate to a few weeks ago get $56 million of brownfield money to assist us in helping Duke Life Point build probably a $400 million investment, which is $500 million in the downtown area of Marquette. So that's a great first step. The next step is to get a purchase agreement, and then in about 2 weeks, about a month, the city manager and I, and maybe some other folks, are going to go to Tennessee to sit down with them and go over their projected project, which they are in the process of doing. And they last conversation I had with them in Lansing was, it's going to be a beautiful building, a real artistic, appropriate draw to the community, and so we want to see what that is, and get in, maybe have some input as to what they're going to do there, and go there and represent the citizens to get our ideas incorporated in their plan. And they invited us to do that, so that's encouraging.
And the sense that I've gotten throughout this process, or from what I've seen of this process, is that while there are certain steps that they have to take in planning a hospital, and there are certain things that need to be done that the average man on the street isn't going to care about, where the ER has to be in relation to the OR, or where certain departments have to be in relation to other departments. There are components that are going to be, public facing and impacting the public. And the impression that I've gotten is that they have plans to bring the public in on that discussion at some point, and to have some level of public forums. Is that happening that you know of, or is that still the plan moving forward?
Well, I think that's definitely the plan, but they don't have any specific plans that they can share yet, and they haven't shared them with us. And you're right. I mean, if you build a hospital and the ER is 5 blocks from the OR, that doesn't work. You have to have it all planned out, and that's one of the reasons they're building this hospital, is because the present hospital, I mean, I worked there for 40 years, and I would get lost because one week they'd move the NICU unit to the 8th floor, and I couldn't find it. And I worked there, and you can imagine somebody from Houghton or Rock to come in and say, how do you get to this place? And because it's all chopped up, and it has to be, really coordinated. The OR and the X-ray department and the lab have to be all connected, and then the rooms have to be certain places. So it's a real important thing how they design it. So public, and one of the things this initial visit to Tennessee would be to kind of get an idea of what they're thinking, so we can come back and get public input when they actually have a piece of paper and say, here's our plan.
Right.
Well, then we have to talk about that.
Right.
But the reality is they own it. I mean, it's not, we can't tell them, no, you got to do this, you got to do that. That means their hospital. So.
Right.
But they will listen, I hope.
So the thought is that to this point, a lot of these planning exercises that they're doing internally are related to how all of the logistics of that hospital are going to work for the doctors and for the employees and the people running it.
Yeah, I think so.
And I was actually just this past weekend, I was in the current hospital, and they were saying on the OB floor that they wished that they were closer to the OR, because if they have to go to an OR, they actually have to cross the street to get
Yep.
there.
Yep.
So that was interesting.
That's not good.
And I heard 2 or 3 times people working there say, I hope this is better in the new hospital. So
Well, it should be, and that's
Yeah.
why they're building it.
yeah, so those issues seem to be manifesting.
When you're 8 centimeters dilated and they say, okay, we're going to take you on a 10-minute trip across the overhead thing and on 3 elevators, just don't push. That's not so good.
Right. Exactly. Well, on that note, I think that's pretty much all I had hoped to talk about.
Okay.
If that's all you've got, thank you very much for.
Well, that's some of the balls we have in the air.
Yeah,
There are lots
yeah.
of them. This has been a busy time.
It seems like it's there's always something else, right?
Yep.
Every meeting you come out of, there's
Exactly.
some project that a dozen people have questions about on the street.
Right. Well, we'll see you in a couple weeks then.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.